creative, innovative, critical, strategic. We deal with all of these terms associated with truth, with thinking. But at the end of the day, they all revolve or pour into each other. They don't revolve around the same thing. There are certain differences. Now, design thinking is really heavily handled when it comes to innovation, when we walk out and talk about innovation. It's not a new concept. The term itself has become popular in the past 20 years, but actually the concept of design thinking itself has always been there ever since like very long time ago. I'm gonna ask you, and we're gonna do a couple of exercises together just to get things going, because I'm actually into the more interactive form of presenting work, just for us to remember it more, because we're not all innovation experts in the room to talk about difficult concepts. And honestly, I don't think giving difficult concepts will stick to our mind quickly. So I'm gonna ask you another question. If you were given the choice of being a fox or a hedgehog, and there's no right or wrong, what would you choose? There's no right or wrong. If you were given the option, what would you choose?
Fox.
Fox. I'll ask you why in a bit. I just want to hear.
More aggressive, more
Okay.
impromptu,
Right.
more agile.
Okay.
I mean, as compared to the other one.
As compared to the hedgehog. Okay. What would you be?
I'm thinking which one of them have more lifespan.
Okay. Actually, that's part of the answer. Anyone else?
I think the survival voice looks nicer.
It looks nicer. Okay. Good.
That's more on the
Hedgehog.
survival part.
The survival part is part of, yeah. This is why we choose the hedgehog. Okay.
Francis more like static personality.
Okay. I'll tell you something. That's actually scientifically true. Now, science has proved that the fox is quicker in thinking. He's more agile, he's more sly, he has so many techniques. He would go around, he would come up with anything to get to what it's want. But the hedgehog is actually good at one thing only, and that is survival. When it feels the danger, it will put its spikes out and it will defend itself. So it's so good at doing exactly one thing, and that is survival. Now, in his book, Jim Collins, in his book in 2001, there's a book called Good to Great that is heavily used in the strategy setting learnings. He says that maybe we need to start adopting the mentality of the hedgehog and really focus on goals to achieve what we really want, rather than maneuvering and having the fox approach. I personally don't believe in that. I personally believe that we need to build a more of a flexible mindset where we actually can choose when to be the fox and when to be the hedgehog. I mean, if I just want to be the hedgehog and survive throughout, then that's a problem as well. The world is really changing a lot. But it's good to understand how even sometimes we can learn from natural creatures and change our thinking approach. Now another exercise. There's gonna be a lot of it. I want you to start naming the colors from top to bottom. Just take in your mind, بعقلكم. From top to bottom. It will take a minute.
Yeah.
Are you guys done? Straightforward. But what if I ask you now to name the color of the word, not the word, name the color of the words, not the word themselves.
Yeah. Scramble my cognitive trainings.
I'll tell you why in a bit.
It takes a while. For the first few, you're confused. Then you you get
It's simply as I ask you to sign with your default hand, your right hand, and then I ask you to make your signature with your left hand. You will do it with your left hand. You'll be fine. But it will just take you more work, more focus. And this is exactly what happened here. And this is the trick to what we call a creative mindset, because the basic of everything is based on creativity. And then on creativity, innovation was built, and then later on, all the concept was built. And the concept of creativity or creative mindset, which leads us to everything else later on in a more structured format, is that the theory says, I don't really believe, like scientifically speaking, of the right brain and the left brain theory. There's more science towards that, but they believe that you actually need to use your full brain. So you can be a combination of like Einstein and Picasso at the same time. So you can be like more into creative imaging, the sounds, the music, the tone of things if you need it, the sense if you need it. And then you can also be rational and focused on details if you need it. And being creative in a mindset itself actually requires certain skills that we need to have in our thought of mind before we build and we move into the more detailed forms of thinking. And actually, creative thinking involves 4 branches, and that is fluency, flexibility, originality, and overflow. Now, originality is the only thing that not all of us can get trained for or can achieve in life, because it's mainly associated with the inventions and coming up with something completely new that the humanity didn't find. Like when Edison came with like the light bulb, or like when the apple fell on and the gravity was actually studied. But things like fluency I think is something we tend to use a lot, especially like in things like brainstorming sessions, where we sit and explore as many ideas as possible. Fluency really focuses on the amount of ideas we can generate, the amount of words we can come up with. I can give you a set of letters and say, come up with the maximum number of words you have if I give you the following 3 letters, for example. Or give me, hi, no, hello. Hello. Or give me the maximum number of ideas, please have a seat. Or give me the maximum number of ideas you can implement in order to get higher customer satisfaction. Fluency really focuses on quantity, not on quality or details. And there's, of course, so many ways and techniques we tend to deal with regards to generating ideas. Now we have labs to do that, actually, softwares to do that, but honestly, nothing comes in place of the human element. But it really focuses on the quantity. And to cultivate that form of creative mindset, you should really focus on allowing people to actually generate more ideas. Within organizations, you should actually cultivate, that's in the environment, in the culture of your organization. With startups, you should allow yourself, we see that a lot in startups in particular, where like we sit and generate idea after idea after idea. Now, later on, we're going to take it into how we implement those ideas coming from fluency into our design thinking mindset. The other thing is flexibility. And flexibility is a factor that is really included when we talk about creativity and then later on in design thinking. So if I tell you that you guys are sitting on chairs, right? If I tell you, what else can we use this chair for? What? True. What else? Fighting. I hear that a lot, by the way. I hear that a lot. What else?
Change the bulb.
صح, stand on something. What else? What do we use to change
Use it as a table.
Correct. This is what is called the deliberate, the unintentional form of flexibility, where something is put in your way and then you have to be flexible about it. Similar to sometimes dealing with problems. And sometimes, no, you have to be flexible deliberately. Let's say you're running a team and you have huge communication issues with them. Or you always tend to end up with fights with your clients. And then you are told that it's because of your approach, and a coach sits with you and tells you that you need to deal with it. Then this way, you have to actually deliberately be flexible. But flexibility is an important format. Originality, as I told you, is the main essence of coming up with new inventions. And at the end, overflow. Now, overflow, we see it a lot when we talk about innovation, because actually it is the concept of having things in front of us and then building on it and making it better. Like, for example, how we've seen generations of phones improving, how we've seen processes improving, how we've seen customer service changing. The concept in the beginning was originally there, and then we had to build on it to improve it and make it better and make it more usable. So these are the main concepts associated with flexibility, originality, and with creative thinking. Now, just to tell you how a life example of how creativity and flexibility and sometimes overflow of thought can really help, and creativity in advertising played a role many, many years ago. This was a picture taken from an ad many years ago about toothpaste. Now, just to tell you a little piece of history, back in the beginning of the 1900s, brushing teeth was not really a habit that people had in the US. It was just not part of their daily routine. So people were not really interested in buying toothpaste. You'd had sellers coming to your doorstep, trying to sell you forms of toothpaste, and nobody was accepting them. Until one person came up with a product called Pepsodent and went to this person called Colin Hopkins. This is one of the best marketeers of human modern history, by the way. He was the person that convinced people that if you eat a bowl of Quaker oats, the oatmeal, that you will have energy for 24/7. He built his marketing strategies on creating habits. At the beginning, he refused. He's like, I'm not going to help you promote this toothpaste. Nobody wants to brush their teeth. But then he decided, you know what, let's give it another look. So he went into science and started delving about dental hygiene and dental health, at the time. And he realized that the plaque forms a coating on teeth that is actually causing them to be yellow. So he used that as the trick to start his campaign. People didn't really care about the health aspect back at the time. People used to do a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking, a lot of partying. People ate butter day and night. Health was not something triggering to them, so they really didn't care. So he built a habit based on beauty. And then stars like Marilyn Monroe came along, these actresses with beautiful white smiles. So he created a cue in their head. There's a center in the head called the stratum that is responsible for creating habits. And he convinced them with the reward, that the reward is going to be your beautiful, shiny teeth. And they took it from there. And Pepsodent became a success. And if you read in the ad, filmed a dangerous coating that robs teeth of their whiteness. So it was dangerous because it robbed the teeth of their whiteness. Where do we see this in modern design thinking? It's actually putting yourself in the shoes of your client. What are people thinking? What are they feeling? What are they saying? What do they want at the end? And this was the reward. Can we run the video? Because this is a video.
Just press it again.
إيش أكبس؟ هيها. This is a YouTube video, and then this is another video. Because I want to show you the difference in the evolvement of ads and how they cater to needs based on the time and the customer preferences. You copied it without it being a video.
I guess so.
You have the other presentation? It's okay, we can come back to it in a bit, not to take more time. And then later I'll show you. But just to show you how, the first ad actually focuses on, you'll wonder why the yellow dent if you brush your teeth with Pepsodent. This was like the song in the ad. And back at the time, this is what people cared about. They wanted their teeth to look white because they wanted to look pretty. Whereas when we see toothpaste ads, what do we see nowadays?
Cavity.
Health, cavity, plaque, and then they bring all those famous dentists and they talk to you about modern dental hygiene. There are products now we never knew existed related to dental hygiene. It's okay, we can come back to it later. So that we're on time to finish. It's okay. So this is what happened. Nowadays, advertising is done based on what we feel or people want, what's so tempting to us. And this is what is shown, actually. If we have time towards the end, I'll show you the two videos. And this moves us to the next step, innovation. Now, some people confuse or use creativity and innovation interchangeably. They do that a lot. Now, although innovation in a concept kind of relates on coming up with new ideas and different ways to do things and so on, which is basically correct, yet innovation particularly is a practice of delivering value. And there needs to be a value after your innovative product or service. If the concept you're coming with does not provide value, and by value I mean it can be cost reduction, cost generation, profit, client retention, reducing of turnover of employees, a good net promoter a score for your product, then it's not considered innovation. If it doesn't derive value, then I'm sorry, your idea is not innovative. Of course, we can sit and talk about innovation for hours and days. Maybe one time we can put a session to specify more about the aspects of innovation. But for now, just to tell you that for a product to be to come up with innovation, it needs to be desirable. It needs to be a product or service that people actually want. They want to buy it. They want to use it. It's going to benefit them. It's going to be viable in the marketplace. It needs to have a good presence. It needs to be approachable for people. It needs to make sense. Sometimes, unfortunately, what we are bombarded with nowadays is لما بنحكي بالعربي بنقول أفكار طموحة كتير. It's too ambitious and it's way too creative that it's not really realistic. It will not, and we expect very fast results, and this is not going to happen. The expectations management here needs to come into place. And then what is possible with technology? When also coming up with innovative ideas, you need to realize what era you are in, okay? And I mean, of course, we need to have like a long-term plan and look at things from further. But again, we need to utilize what we have now. Also, to implement innovative ideas, we need to make sure we have the resources. Because if it's going to cost us too much, then it's not going to create the value we want. So these are the main aspects that we need to keep in mind when we're dealing with innovation. Now to the story of the day, design thinking. Design thinking is actually a mindset. And there's no rigid, specific framework for design thinking. The main aspect associated with design thinking is basically including a lot of empathy. Empathy is actually the key to design thinking, and it's the first step and it's the milestone. By empathy, we mean understanding your clients, not just by sitting them and asking them questions, by monitoring their habits, by checking what they do, by sitting with them and knowing how they feel, how they think, and then building an empathy, what we call an empathy map. Did anyone ever see an empathy map before, or do one, or try to do one? Okay, it's a very easy thing. I mean, just for the lack of time, just to let you know, the next time you want to think about what your clients are doing or think, all you have to do is draw a box and just split it into 4 and think about things your clients do, things your clients might think, because you're not sitting in their heads, so you really not know what they're thinking, how they feel, and what they say. What they say is maybe easy if you are doing actually customer reviews, or you're asking for feedback and stuff, or like things you would hear from the market. And this empathy map is the start when you start drawing your customer experience journey. So as we said, design thinking is a mindset, and it involves a lot. And if you go online, you'll see hundreds of thousands of definitions for design thinking. But the simplest one is that it's a process of analyzing problems with a product or service and developing creative solutions for them. The strategy enables businesses to improve its product, solves questions, opens business opportunities, and it involves a lot of innovation and collaboration amongst employees. This is the second key to design thinking, is that there's a lot of sharing of ideas, lots of collaboration with teams. One of the famous quotes that are commonly used when we describe design thinking is that the integrative thinking and empathy-based skills of designers to derive success and differentiation. So basically, you need to know your users, discover insights, design the solutions, implement them, and evaluate them. There's the good thing about design thinking approach, and I'll explain it now in a bit, is that it allows for a lot of testing in a shorter period of time. Because when you're adopting a design thinking mentality, you need to do lots of prototyping, of trying to to design your products or to think about them. But you don't have to wait till the product is fully developed to continue testing it. It allows for a room of a lot of testing. So it's okay to do mistakes, and I'm going to talk about that in more details, but I want to ask you something. I know all of you work in different fields, but what are the most common problems you usually deal with at work? Instructions. Distractions, okay. Communication. Time management. What else?
Complexity of our instructions.
Complexity of instructions. What else?
Convincing clients.
Oh, this is like the problem of the world. I'll tell you a story about that one. I was actually telling it to a lady here a bit ago. If you take a deeper look on the problems we deal, whether they're related to clients, whether they're related to resources, whether they're related to profits, to margins, to setting KPIs, to performance reviews, even communication problems. I can't deal with my manager, or I can't deal with my colleague, or my neighbor in the next office is a disaster. None of the problems are actually linear problems. They're complex. There's nothing that comes like, for example, like if my phone gets stuck, I'll restart it and then the problem is resolved. But what if I restart it and it doesn't work? Then there's a more difficult problem behind that. And this is usually what we deal with. None of the problems we deal with, including time management and communication, can be resolved just like with a click of a button. And this is the concept of design thinking. Is actually a mindset we tend to build to solve problems, because usually problems are not linear. They're just not fixed like this. For example, one of the very common problems all of us deal with is with service providers is customer care. Some of us have horrible experiences, and some of us, I've worked a lot in client relationship management for a very long time, and on training people on CRM systems and implementing systems and with business relations, and I used to take, sorry to say, but hell from clients sometimes. It was a nightmare. And what I realized is the complexity of dealing with clients is increasing with time, because the client now does not only reach to you by the phone. They can chase you through the app. They can chase you directly face-to-face. They can chase you on the phone. They can pop up in your inbox. They are everywhere. This is how we communicate with others. And this is one of the problems, this is a very good problem of how design thinking helps. Because there's not just like one communication channel. Just like the banks. Back in the days, the only way we can get something from the bank done is actually to show up there personally. Now you can surround them from everywhere. And hence, and customer service departments, recently only in the past few years, they started having people specialized to deal with complaints coming from one channel so that people will not go crazy. And because there was also one of the problems was that there was a lot of turnover in customer service departments because people could not handle the pressure coming from everywhere. So this is a form of a daily problem we deal with on a daily basis. It involves a lot of taking consideration the business aspect of things, the technological aspects, the engineering, the design. All of this is taken into consideration. Now, as I told you, there's no specific framework. You can start by saying that we need to build the empathy and collect the data and then set our design, our prototype, and test it, and then launch it. That's the common framework you will see if you Google it. But in reality, there are themes for design thinking because it's a thinking mindset. One of them is mainly the most common theme, and the most important one is human empathy. And as I said, that is actually taking into consideration your clients and also your team. This is also another aspect, the people you work with. And by empathy, unfortunately, we tend to confuse it sometimes with sympathy. And we fall into a very big trap. Sometimes we get a difficult client with the weirdest complaint, for example. And then we just do anything because we've all learned that the customer is always right. Well, in reality, the customer is not necessarily right. Like customers do mistakes as well. I believe that the customer has the right for good service or has the right to get the problem resolved. And this is what this is all about. So empathy is actually realizing what people think, what people may say, what they may consider, so that we can put ourselves in a way in their shoes. Sympathy is basically feeling sorry for them and just trying to please them. Reframing and questioning, and that is here where comes where we actually define problems. So, okay, we've met with our clients, we've looked at the scorecards, we looked at our results, we looked at our data, and then we need to define and redefine problems. Problems are not and you need here to do a lot of asking whys and what ifs when you reframe the problems. And you need to be very open, and here flexibility plays a very important role in the form of thought, because you need to be accepting of opinions and accepting of criticism. And we're going to talk about dealing with ambiguity in a bit. Prototyping and making. Does any of you work here in designing applications? You work in designing apps. You work. When you started building the prototype, how did you do it?
Customer requirements. You become the user?
Yeah, I designed it to be as much simple as
Did you draw it with your hand or
direct on the computer.
direct on the computer?
Yeah, I frame it. And then
Okay. One of the good things about prototyping, the next time you want to come up with something, try to draw it yourself. Or try to put it on a board and start staking things. One of the things that helps us actually with prototyping is working on our whiteboarding skills. Whiteboarding skills are actually the use of normal whiteboards or papers. Sometimes when people are working with designing gadgets, it is good to actually cut things with your hand and try to design, for example, virtual reality gadgets and stuff like that. It's good to actually try to do it with your hand for two reasons. First of all, you will get an actual feel while you're doing the design. Second of all is that actually our brains are very visual. So our things tend to stick to our head in a very better way when we actually visualize and feel something. So give that a go the next time. And one of the skills I suggest everyone works on, I'm still working on mine a lot, is really whiteboarding and sketching and trying to utilize and this is why, like in so many thinking hubs and in so many startup places, you will see like thinking rooms and places with lots of post-its. This allows for exchange of ideas, collaboration of thought, and it also allows you to actually envision things in a much better way. And then the most important thing is tolerance for risk and ambiguity. Risk is always associated with anything. We're coming up with a new concept. We're coming up with a new design. We need to accept dealing with the ambiguity and failures and tolerance and tolerate that very well. We tend to be people that like structured things. The reason, like for example, when we talk about one of the things we tend to fear is that if I don't have a process to do something, I might not do it. If something is not clearly instructed, you've spoken about the complexity of instructions. If I don't have something really structured in front of me, I can not do it. We don't like to deal with ambiguous thought and ambiguous things and things that we cannot expect. So we need to train ourselves to be more open if we want to adopt a design thinking mentality, because failures are probable. And as I told you, it allows for room. You don't have to complete a product to be able to rethink it. So it actually, when you adopt that, if you adopt the design thinking framework, you will find yourself being able to deal with uncertainties in a better way. So, for example, Stephen, I need to drink water, I'm sorry. So, both in a cognitive sense and in an emotional sense. There's lots of exchange of thought. Now, unfortunately, there's a trap that we tend to fall in when exchanging thought. That sometimes we are not really accepting of others, or we come with a mindset of right and wrong, where actually you should allow the open flow of ideas and you should allow building on ideas. So for example, if you ever decide to sit for a brainstorming sessions, as I talked about in the beginning about fluency, are not about discussing ideas. It's about idea generation. But we never tend to do that. We start sharing ideas and then criticizing ideas. No, this is not gonna work because, no, this is not gonna work because. This is the second stage of brainstorming, okay? This is the second stage of brainstorming. For example, this is the second stage. It comes in point 2. It's about generating as much as possible and allowing that room to be there. Now, just before I forget, you said something about expectations management. Okay, let me tell you a story. I do lots of training programs in the UAE, and one time I was giving a training in one of the government authorities over there. All the attendees, the maximum number of experience they had was 3. So they were all juniors. And one of them, we were talking about organizational behavior at the time. So as we spoke, he was telling me about how frustrated he was with the business world and that this is not what he had in mind and that he is jeopardizing his career doing a desk job. And then I'm like, okay, how long have you been working for? And he said he was there for like 8 or 9 months. My second question to him, did you guys watch Suits? Yeah. Okay. My question to him was, did you watch Suits? And he said yes. So for those that don't know Suits, it's a series on Netflix with very good-looking lawyers that talk in a very sophisticated way, and they win all their trials. So I'm like, okay, you need to stop. Rule number 1, stop watching Suits. Rule number 2, you need to understand that none of us live like Harvey Specter. We are not that. In reality, when you start your work in a corporate, you will sit in a cubicle, you will do work that you don't like, you'll have a management that bugs you, probably someone next to you is gonna be too noisy, and you're not gonna like it. And the bills, and honestly, you will not afford that $20 coffee. You will really go buy coffee from a vending machine with coins because your paycheck will not allow you to do that. So this is what expectation management is all about. And unfortunately, the culture does not really help with expectations management. We all think we're gonna take over the world. And then when the rock of reality, as my mom calls it, hits, we just realize that we're in the wrong place. So, yeah. Yeah, but we can talk about that in a different session. I can talk about that for long, sorry guys. All right, so what does the design thinking mindset include? It asks a lot of what ifs to give lots of alternatives. So if I have a problem, I'll ask myself, what if we try it differently? What if we add something? What if we reverse the process? What if, what if, what if? And this will let us think from a different angle, not from our own angle. Asking what if will allow you to look at things from a different dimension. Optimism, and I'm not talking about that the world is pink and happy and give you a caffeine dose. Optimism is basically looking at problems as challenges that can be solved. This is an optimistic approach, because unfortunately some of us really get bombarded with problems that it really shatters us, especially with young generations starting new companies when, for example, they don't understand why am I facing this problem or why is this happening, because they are too optimistic but in a wrong way. So you need to build that proper mindset and look as problem and never take problems personal. It's not about you, it's just something is not working in the process. Human empathy, as we said, putting ourselves in the shoes of clients, in the shoes of colleagues, in the shoes of other people working with us, and asking why might they be thinking that way. For example, let's say we are doing a test on a new phone. A new design is coming up into the market. I find it sleek. For example, the Flip, the Samsung Flip that closes. When they did the testing, most of the people who liked it were women, actually. Why? It looked very nice, very sophisticated. It looked really so fashion forward in a way. And even when you open it, the screen looked really interesting. The camera was amazing, taking the photos. But then when you come and think about if you were like a guy, maybe many of the guys didn't like it in the beginning. They said, this doesn't look very practical. It looks weird when I put it in my pocket, this and that. But then if you put yourself in place of your wife or your sister or your female colleague and start thinking of that form, that is building empathy on why would she think that way? Putting ourselves in the shoes of others. Experimentation, you need to keep trying and trying and trying and retrying and then testing and trying again. This is the only way it's gonna work. Now, experimentation is a bit harder when you're providing a service, not a product.
What if you've got time to do that?
Well,
Sometimes
this is an yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Sometimes you're so short on time.
Yeah.
That, like prototyping, as you said.
Yes.
I belong to joinery and interior design.
Yes.
Where if you're not sure of a detail, you
Yes.
immediately do a prototype. But that's it. You've just got a chance. Maybe
Yes.
you don't have,
Okay.
repetitive. So this is where maybe I don't know how well it works.
I'll tell you how. And this is a very good question. How many years have you been working?
24 years.
Okay. So you've been working for long enough to actually have seen a lot. So let's say we are working in any field. Let's say I was working in a company for 5 years and my colleague has been working in the company for 20 years. 20 years, people will come up with solutions quicker, not because they're more creative, but experience. That's what I'm telling you. Design thinking is not gonna do you magic. It's a mindset that you build and you implement on your daily life. Of course, sometimes in the beginning, you need to be the hedgehog or the fox. So you need to choose. When it's an emergency, you're definitely the hedgehog. You have to do it.
It's catch-22 actually. Depends
Yeah.
on, sometimes the junior guy gives you an impromptu.
Of course.
Because you're so much used to thinking in a particular way.
Of course.
That you think, no, it won't work, but then it might.
Yes. But again, it is a mindset.
Hey.
It is a mindset. It's not going to do rocket science for you. It's not going to do like wonders for you. It's something you adopt in your daily life and you implement. And this is why, as I told you, there's really no framework for this. You're not going to walk out of this room having a process to do so that you come up with a design thinking mentality. If I'll tell you that, then I won't be telling you the truth, okay? There is a general framework that we implement that will actually help us go on. And this is why I gave the example. This is exactly why I gave the example of the fox and the hedgehog in the beginning, is because honestly, sometimes we really need to play the hedgehog. Sometimes in industries like, for example, let's say you're designing an application. You have an application. What's your application for?
It is a reminder application.
Oh, okay. That's very useful. So you're working with an app. So you have more room to actually work with changes of design, changes with customer user interface, updates, and all of that. But let's say someone is working in a dairy product factory and he's the production manager with like 200 people working on the production line. How much room for creativity and innovation would this guy have? Not much. The innovation will come maybe in the machinery, in the process, in the workflow, but in the actual execution, there's a production line. So how much we rely on this is really taken case by case and when we can do it. And this is flexibility again. We spoke about flexibility a bit ago. You see, so I'd like to use simple terms and then I'll show you how everything at the end links to each other. And of course, collaboration. And never, as you said, someone younger or with less experience can come up with ideas. This is a form of collaboration we tend to deal with every day. Sometimes, please.
You're saying the first point is asking what if. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how many what ifs are enough?
There's no number.
But what if you are implementing it in a practical scenario and you, for example, the strategy setting.
Okay, give me an example.
So, for example, if I'm designing a process and I'm asking people about the ideas. Right? So yeah, I can get a lot of ideas. Right?
Of course.
But then, how many what ifs are enough?
Well, it really depends on the goal. If you set the goal correctly, you will be able to know if the goal is met. It's really until that. Did any of you ever hear about the 5 whys concept? The 5 whys is the mother of root cause analysis. Many of you have maybe heard or worked with root cause analysis before. It came up in the 30s by Mr. Takeshi Toyoda, the founder of Toyota. And he had lots of problems in supply chain and they had lots of problems in production. And then he went down and went on the ground and said what's happening and realized that if I ask 5 times why consecutively, then we will get to the root cause of the problem. For example, you work in a printing press and a client refused to pay for the leaflets you printed. You'll say, why did he refuse? Because we were late. Why were we late? Because we ran out of ink. Why did we run out of ink? Because we had to use the ink for another order. Why did we have to do that? And then what's the solution? Maybe get a supplier that can provide us on short term. But sometimes you can ask 3 whys and get to the root cause. Maybe sometimes you need to ask 10 whys. So with what if, it really depends on the goal. So really defining, as we said, defining and redefining the problem is a very important part of getting the solution. So there's really no number. If I'll tell you there's a number, again, I will not be telling you the reality.
Sorry. Can you move the mic just a bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. To move it to where? Up? أنا آسفة. Okay. Aslan, I feel very loud already.
Sorry.
Yes.
Just go back on the previous slide.
Yes.
Where you said human empathy. Quite well didn't understand the meaning of human empathy. I know you did this for the second time.
Yes.
So you're getting into your client's shoes. You don't want that. You want him to come to your shoes.
Well, human empathy can be gained in 2 ways. I'm so sorry. I just need to drink water again.
So what my first question was, sorry.
Yes. No, go ahead.
So we get so many clients and customers who
Yes.
want to design their furniture,
Yes.
houses, and, but they come with such ideas which as laymen, they want it, but it might not work, it might not look good.
Okay.
So if I step into their shoes, I might give them rubbish.
No, it's not like that. It's actually not.
So that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. So,
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how. I want to ask you something. Do you do client reviews after like that you deliver? Yeah, you do that. That's part of building your empathy map. I'll do this in more detail with you in a bit. We have the Q&A time after the session, if you may allow me, and I'll explain this thoroughly. But putting yourself in their shoes is not giving ideas on their behalf. It's actually thinking, why did they behave that way? Why did they say that way? What makes them choose these colors? Sometimes they'll come to you and ask you for red walls, and you think red walls are terrible, and then you will just do it for them because they want it. But then you will think, why? Maybe it means something to them. Maybe from a cultural aspect, it means something to them.
you need to get into their shoes to bring them out of them.
To just understand why they are thinking that way. So I'm going to ask you one last exercise together. Let's say you work in a real estate company, and someone comes to you, a developer, and tells you, we want to build a new tower, and we are targeting people of A-class standard to be our clients. And this is the only piece of information they have given you. How would you start in defining the persona? Or like, how would you go around defining, where do you start with this? They have just told you that they want to build a tower and whom they're targeting. They didn't give you anything else.
Do my research
About?
about the class A, what they like.
Okay.
What they love.
Okay, good.
Why should they buy it?
Why should they buy? Okay.
Who are they? Who are they?
Who are they? Drawing the persona.
So basically, you just have maybe an informal meeting where you indirectly suck out information
Yes.
from what they are, what their likes are, what their habits are.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly. And this is building an empathy map for people and understanding what they are, their lifestyle, their habits. What do these people do? Actually giving you an indication about the client or the user is, this is like more enough than actually telling you about the entire project. You can go around and build the entire concept just by defining the persona of the people that are going to be buying that project. You can suggest locations, you can suggest designs, you can suggest forms of furniture, type of finishing, and so on. So if you're leading a team, or if you're running your own company, design thinking requires, as we said, framing the problem. So if you know the problem, you'll know how many what-ifs are. Sometimes we think the problem, let's say, is in the product, and then we realize the problem was actually in training people how to use the product. And we faced situations like this, where we actually think the problem is something, and then we realize that the problem is completely something else. So defining the correct problem, enabling experimenting, and in experimenting, I know this may take time, but this is a continuous process. Especially now with the amount of exchange of information that we have and the amount of development happening in every aspect, there's a lot of ongoing experimentation going. Communicating ideas, and this is for people who are not working on their own, they're working with others. Sharing ideas will not take anything away from you. It actually allows you to grow. Unfortunately, many of the things that we have, whether in small, medium, or even in large corporates, is that people are afraid to share ideas. They're afraid to share ideas because someone might think their ideas are not good enough. They're afraid I'll share ideas so someone will take it and take the credit away from me, and this is like a terrible problem leaders have to deal with the whole time. They're afraid to share ideas because they want to come up with a new concept first. So sharing ideas and building that culture is very important, and then directing the team and defining stakeholders, defining who's going to work with you on what is very important. Now, before we come to an end, I'm going to give you a couple of examples about companies who adopt design thinking in so many aspects. One of the most important ones is Nike. Nike adopts design thinking in so many ways, including the products, the end product. One of the leading ways they implement design thinking framework is incorporating, from an innovation perspective, is they work on innovative sustainability. So most of the Nike shoes now you have around are made from 100% recycled material, carbon-free material, and you can read that on the box now, for example, and on the clothing, it's sustainable, this and that. And the reason they did is that they put themselves in the client's perspective and their teams and their company in terms of resources. For them, one of the things they said is that we realize now global warming is everywhere. We've seen very hot, long summer, winters starting all of a sudden, earthquakes, floods, unexpected rains, and all of that. So what they said is that because of the climate change and what's happening, we've had very hot seasons for a very long amount of time. And this has actually affected the amount of outdoor training athletes have. So what we can do is actually work on sustainable programs and use recycled materials in producing the shoes, because this is going to help the environment. And at the end, if the environment improves this way, we are helping the athletes. So they took it from so many directions. So Nike is a very good example of companies that implement that. And then, before I give you the last example, there is also challenges that we face when we try to implement design thinking. One of them is the big picture analysis. Sometimes we draw a very big, unrealistic big picture that we look at. And they always tell us, focus on the big picture. Two terms I hate: focus on the big picture and think outside the box. I'll talk to you about inside the box later on. But focusing on the big picture, if the big picture is actually too big, it will really demotivate us and we will not be really focused on goals. So it's okay to split your big pictures into 2 or 3 smaller ones to be able to work on things. Step reliance, as I told you, sometimes we tend to want instructions and clear frame of work for us to function, rather than actually working it on our own. Sometimes we can get too tired from experimenting, from trying, from thinking, from coming up with new ideas, from hearing clients and sitting on one-to-one times to build my empathy map. And the one that tends to hit us all hard is the desire to control. We as humans are control freaks. We want to feel in control of the idea, of the project, or of everything. And this is a very limitation. There's a big limitation when it comes to adopting any mindset that revolves around whether it's design thinking, whether it's creativity, whether it's being critical. Some of the day-to-day sentences we deal with that also affects us. I didn't know you were going on vacation the week before we present to the CEO. I'm trying to get better in research, and I hoped someone would help me or coached me. Things that would bring us down. Or even worse, sometimes, Joe doesn't believe in what we're doing. He's always late for our meetings, trying to belittle colleagues to be the shining star. We tend to have that. You see, these small sentences, they really affect the way we think and the way if we try to adopt any mindset change. The last example I want to tell you is a very impressive example of how design thinking was actually implemented in India to help the rural community, especially in developing countries, because there is not a lot of funding for so many projects. So one of the foundations that's called Grey for Good worked with a medical company, and they came up with I think they were named. They are called the Juvi Bindis, the bindi that is Jeevan Bindis, exactly. Now the Jeevan Bindis, do you know the concept? What do they put into the skin?
It will be good from your mouth.
Yeah, thank you. The Jeevan Bindis is an excellent example of a design thinking approach and the utilizing of innovation into serving communities. What happens is that some ladies in India were suffering heavily from iodine deficiency. And because these ladies mostly work in farming, they have hard days, they don't have the resources. So it was very difficult for them to actually go and get the medication on a regular basis. It could be given to them for free for some time, but then it is very difficult to continuously give it for free. And even not all of them have medical centers close to them to be able to go and get that medication. So Grey for Good did this amazing initiative where they actually designed the bindis with one medical firm that actually infuses iodine into the skin So they get the dose they need over time without actually having to go anywhere. So they just go for once, they put the bindi on, and then the problem was actually resolved. So this is a beautiful way actually of thinking, of serving communities and implementing design thinking. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And thank you. And yes.
Can I exchange the mic?
أشيله؟ ها شو أعمل هلا؟ نفس الشيء؟ أوكي. So any questions? Anyone has to add anything or ask any questions before we wrap up the session? Oh, okay. Do you want to ask more about the empathy part?
Yeah, I'm quite okay. But
Yeah.
because I was trying to, put the empathy thing in specific areas.
Setups, yes.
So where it doesn't work, where you need to actually, because they are, at the end of the day, they are laymen.
Yes.
And I had an instance in the morning where I had to convince the customer why there should be a proper base to the TV cabinet.
Okay.
And she had come up with something which won't work.
Okay.
So it took me some time, but then I got her to do what I wanted. So, because at the end of the day, they are laymen, they don't understand. And we need to educate them.
Well, this is one way to look at it, educating your client about why scientifically it won't work.
Because at the end of the day, they're end users.
Yeah.
We need to train them that why this thing will not work.
Yes.
You need to do something better.
Exactly.
It will last longer.
Yes.
More, so things like
This is another thing is that sometimes when I say scientifically, I mean in a way that makes sense to her, because usually we need to speak with the language of others for them to relate to us. The last thing you would want, let's say I go to a bank and then I am working on rescheduling a loan or something, and then the banker starts talking to me in language that looks like Chinese to me. I don't understand anything. How can I build that?
Right.
And a form of building empathy with clients is also by speaking their language and resonating with them. Any other questions? Yes, please. We'll hear from him and then I'll hear from you. Yes.
Well, I have some kind of question which it's kind of challenge the whole topic what discuss
Okay.
design thinking, and pretty much I'm into graphic design. And let's say there is a concept of visual communication,
Yes.
which is this whole concept. What we get this presentation is to make sure that we develop some skills to connect different fields and different, let's say, we define it as a problems, we define it as a service, as a product, a group of people, and with design thinking we're kind of creating new or innovative, we use a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
It's kind of like communication thing, or
It's a mindset thing.
because when it's design thinking, it's kind of like very much everything open, no rules, no things.
It's not that
and
it doesn't
frame
have a rule.
something.
There's a general framework that we spoke about that you actually need to understand or build the empathy framework for your clients. And then you need to work on your design or define it's actually a concept for dealing with problems and challenges and coming up with new concepts. So this is what design thinking is all about, because we tend to deal with problems every day. And then you go into actually building it and then testing it out. Now, sometimes if it's an ongoing day-to-day work, like for example, give me a problem you deal with when it comes to delivering design to a client.
Let's say they don't understand the implementation of some parts, which takes a lot of time to be created and discussed, and they don't have any interest because they don't know about it. So it takes for me time to discuss with them.
Discuss with them the implementation or the problem.
The brand exists in the manual, the colors and all these things, which actually it is a small part of you that you ask, but you don't have the background. So let's, and they will just say like, okay, we don't need this part, we just need the smallest part. And I kind of tell them like,
I'll tell you how this will help you.
Abstraction of the whole process that you're missing.
How frequent do you face this problem?
This is it's very frequent problem because
Yes.
only designers work on that.
Yes.
And
So what you need to
consumers
do-
are not aware of
Exactly. So you know what your problem is?
that. Definitely.
Is related to actually building the client expectations. Because when you work in a niche industry, for example, you work in engineering, your clients are not engineers, by the way. You are an MEP contractor, and the owner of the new design office is not even an architect. She's just the owner's wife, you know, and she wants to give you orders. She does not understand what you're talking about. So the problem, what you need to do, what this will help you with, is actually to define the problem initially. If you say you face this problem more than once, it means that you need to think, you have answered the question, the clients don't understand this.
It's a common, not only me.
I know, it's everyone. Everyone has this problem. So what you need to do is actually define the problem, and that is building the client's understanding for problems. How can I do it? I'll start, you know what? Mimicking your meetings with clients and predefining what you're gonna tell to them. And the next time you go to a client, the first thing you start to tell them is build the right expectations and explain this to them in simple words beforehand. You will not fall into that problem again, okay? I'll answer this question and then I have something to tell you. Yes, please.
I have two questions.
Yes.
One is how design thinking works the best? I mean, like, is it a top-bottom approach or a bottom-up approach?
Okay, that's a good question.
That's first question.
Mm.
Second question is, let's say I am the one, like proposing design thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And if my management is not at all in favor of it, how can I, like overcome that challenge?
Okay. There's no per se right or wrong, whether it's bottom to top or top to bottom. This really goes to like the organization and the case by case, okay? The answer to your second question is that you will not go and tell management, we are relying on design thinking to do this. Design thinking is part of innovation, actually. And this is why I keep on telling people. Unfortunately, the topics are sometimes, because now we hear this a lot, we think that it's an approach that we're gonna take. It's part of our trip towards getting more innovative products and innovative ways of solving solutions. So what you need to convince your management about is actually being more innovative towards dealing with problems, not to approach design thinking. And this will only come with practice and implementing and showing results. Nobody, when I come to you guys and talk about it, I am 100% sure that maybe, okay, some of you have enjoyed this, but deep down inside, still people have some hesitations about this. And they think this is not realistic and this is not gonna work, which is normal, which is very normal. It takes time. How is it gonna take time? If you take a few things of what we've spoken about, and I made sure to put it in very simple language for people to take it with them and to say so many stories so that people can remember them and implement them, and then you see results. Your management will never be convinced until they see results. And by results, I mean better numbers, better numbers.
Immediate result.
That is different. That is different because this is not actually the immediate results, and setting time frames and expectations is a bit different than this. This has to do with a lot. Yes, please.
Yeah, you kind of touched upon managing customers' expectations.
Yes.
And this new word with all the social media.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of it is public, right?
True.
For like, say you're providing a banking service,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody is a victim of a fraud case, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes on public and explains his case on public,
Mm-hmm.
and other people relate to.
Yeah, and then they start commenting one by one.
And
Yes.
It's a whole chaos.
Yes.
So this creates a situation in
Yes.
the organization.
Okay.
So then how do you apply design thinking
In dealing with.
in a chaotic situation?
Okay. Now, in chaotic situations, you need to play the hedgehog to begin with, okay? Now, actually, if the problem is recurring and you see that so many people have actually faced the similar problem, then the approach is different than if it was like a one-time thing, okay? Now, dealing with social media and external factors that affect the running of business. Nowadays, I think it needs to be put under crisis management more than anything. But that being said, you can really implement it in the communication channels with clients. You can really implement it in a different way. If you want, we'll take time after the session to just give you some ideas, because actually it really depends on the problem. You need to define what's the problem. If the problem was actually a fraud, then this is something that maybe the bank does not really has direct control of. And here the approach is completely different. Design thinking will be implemented with things related to the cybersecurity part, or the customer service that were on the ground at the time, and so on. Whereas if it was related to an employee behavior, then the way you can implement it is a bit different. The prototype that you will build to test and try a new thing will be different. It really depends on case by case. With regards to social media in particular, just a tip. I don't know, do you do social media management, or are you in customer service?
It's a part of.
Okay. Never delete a negative comment. This is a very important tip for you. Never, and never switch off the comments. Never. My son once wrote a terrible comment about his school on Google. And the school told me, we will not delete it for transparency purposes, but your son has written his full name and class on Google. So it's for his own safety and security, we'll have to delete it. When it comes to social media in particular, never delete negative comments, keep them there. If you delete it, it means that you are kind of, actually no, it's like you are not standing up for solving the problem. It's like you're running away from it. People take it really badly. People take it really badly, okay? So try not to do that. I know it will be annoying, but then remember, I would rather, if someone has done that, post more so that it will go down in the algorithm, and then khalas, people will forget about it, okay? Rather than switching off comments or deleting them. But where design thinking apply, we can have many different streamlines, because it really starts with to define where did the problem happen. Is it like a security problem, or is it a customer service problem, or is it a misuse problem from the client? For example, again, my son, I give lots of examples about my children, but I mean, here we are. One time he did, I don't know how he managed to find his dad's credit card password, and he did in-app purchases for $5,000. And yes, $5,000 of in-app purpose. And we had Citibank call us, and they're like, there are continuous purchases on your credit card, and we had to freeze it. And it took us a month to get maybe 80% of the money only back, because he actually has put the password. And honestly speaking, and he was only like 6 at the time, and when we spoke to him, he said, you're my parents, you didn't explain that credit card means money, so it's your mistake. So, so again, the problem was actually here misuse from our side. So the way it was handled was terrible, by the way. It was really difficult. They need a lot to work on that reporting the problem. So this is one good example, because actually getting to someone that can actually help you took so long. They just told us the card was canceled, so we had to contact the Apple Store. And the way you contact them was very tedious and very difficult. So this is one problem. The problem was misuse from our side, but again, it's not the bank's responsibility. It's actually Apple's to solve. So in your case, was it because of the bank, or was it because of another provider? Especially now we hear a lot of fraud cases because of links that are sent and subscriptions.
Yeah,
and
you know, when it comes to fraud, the virus is always
it's everywhere.
Of the antivirus.
Everywhere.
And it's also awareness and
Of course.
come into it. And when you try to explain it to a customer, it's like it sounds Chinese. As you
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah.
They don't
And
understand
people
it. They don't understand it. It's very difficult.
It's a very messy
Yeah,
situation.
that's true. I can give you more insights of that after the. Does anyone have any question? Yes, please.
Regarding the situation, so
Yeah.
what he was talking about, I'm in cybersecurity.
Okay.
So one of the weakest link, what we say, is the end user.
Yeah.
They are the weakest link.
Yeah.
And in case of frauds that's happening
Yes.
or being reported, it's going to happen.
Mm.
All right. The only way is tracking those, like you said. Do not switch off the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what is the root cause, because
Yeah.
that's the one thing to go about.
Yeah.
And the other thing is crisis management.
Of course.
So big companies, including banks
Yeah.
or whichever that have fraud cases that's happening, they have tons of it.
Yes.
Tons of it per day, which
Yeah.
we have seen. And the extent of fraud is insane.
Yes.
So at that point of time, it's more about how you can be disaster ready.
Yes.
And in case if something comes by, be ready with what kind of statements you can
That's very true. And actually, you've mentioned something very important. They deal with thousands of cases like this every day. But for the person who's lost his money, for him, this is the biggest problem on earth.
Actually, these are the simplest
Yeah.
because we've seen in companies where intruders in Bahrain, companies in Bahrain, had hackers in them for more than 6 months, deciding how the stamps are, how the invoice is printed.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's
It's
a
like-
simple lot of them.
You're enjoying your job, obviously. Any other questions, guys, or any comments? All right. Yes.
You will talk about outside and inside the box.
Yes. Okay, good thing. Just before we finish. When I say the word box, what do you think? Or how does it make you feel?
Caged.
Caged. You just see that box. And this is why I don't like this word, because unintentionally we all tend to feel the same way about this word. We all think about something specifically closed. What you need to do is define your own box. How does it look for your business? And then work around it. It can be a cuboid, it can be look like a bowl, it can look like of any form, and then think outside it. Don't restrain yourself. The problem with the concept of, especially when management keeps telling people, you need to think outside the box, it puts too much pressure on people without realizing it. Because you'll be like for example, like as I told you, I do a lot of psychometric analysis work. By nature, an S-type person, which means I'm not more of an intuitive person. I like facts, I like numbers, I like figures, I like that kind of thing. So if someone pushes me into being creative, I can have a nervous breakdown. And this can actually happen to all of us. If someone actually pushes you to be, now you need to think, go to your office and think outside the box and come up with ideas. It's like, you can't do that. So don't take it too heavily, this statement, okay? We need to be kind to ourselves, you know? Don't let it define you. Yes?
You need to make your own box.
Exactly.
You have a procedure,
Yeah.
but it should be also, you should be flexible to adjust that procedure according to problems that happen.
Exactly.
To have solutions to
Me.
prevent the occurrence. you
So,
know.
and this is why we spoke about flexibility sometime during in the beginning. Now, one thing I want to tell you for the Kickstart tenants, if you are a tenant of Kickstart, I'm going to be giving some free one-to-one sessions for coaching, just one-to-one sessions for Kickstart tenants. So if any of you needs that, just inform Hasib and he will be in touch and we can schedule some time. I'm going to be out of Bahrain for a training in the beginning of next week for 3 days, and then I'm going to be back inshallah, and then after it, if anyone needs some time, I'll be more than happy to come and sit with them and deal with problems they have and hopefully get a solution. And I'm going to do it free for Kickstart tenants, all right? Thank you so much, guys, and wish you a very pleasant evening. You want to see the Pepsodent ad? Let them see it. Just show them the old one, because the old one is fun. The new one looks like any toothpaste ad.
This one?
So this is what TV ads looked like a very long time ago. Imagine this was on TV, oh my God. So this is it. You can stop it here, it's fine. This is how ads looked on TV, and nowadays they bring like very sophisticated dentists that will tell you about the importance of dental hygiene and the health of your teeth. Before, they didn't care. They just wanted to look pretty.
But what is the more effective, the beauty or the bad smell?
Good. During that time, for them, they wanted to look good and look nice and smell good, okay? And this is why the ads were designed that way. Nowadays, for us, we look for fresh breath, healthy teeth, less visits to the dentist because dental care is so expensive. And we look at it from a complete, because health is also becoming something very prominent. So ads now are built بتحاكي الناس. It needs to speak to the people in their own language. I can have the best, most creative ad in the world, but then you will put it down the streets and no one would look at it because simply, I did lots of concept testing for ads. I worked for a company a long time ago called Ipsos, and they're a market research company. And I did lots of qualitative research on ads. So any company that wanted like a new ad, they would give it to me, and then I would do the research work to come up with, is this ad gonna work or not? And it was hilarious because sometimes people can get over creative and designed things. When we show it to others, they don't even know what it's talking about.
And modern times, I think they use reverse psychology.
Of course.
So they'll show cavity, they'll show plaque.
Yeah.
This, they don't show that, they just show white teeth.
They didn't brush their teeth during that time. They just wanted to look like Marilyn Monroe. That's all. All right, guys, thank you so much. And sorry for taking more of your time. Thank you.